Hi, this is Pete the Tech Guy, and this is the latest of our subscriber commentaries. If you'd like to see the entire commentary and you're just watching the teaser right now, just go to my website, DaTipJar.com, and hit the tip jar for any amount, and you'll get the code for not only this commentary, but the previous commentary of this week. If you want to get all of the commentaries as they come out, hit the subscribe button for any amount, even as little as $2 a week, and you will get all the commentaries as they are released, as long as you remain a subscriber. Today we're going to talk a little bit of strategy and tactics, which is the name of an old Wargamer magazine, but has a lot to do with politics and wars, in fact. The difference between tactical advantage, which is a short-term advantage, and strategic thinking is very important. One of the best examples of the difference between strategic thinking and tactical thinking came in the Civil War at the Battle of Gettysburg. At Cemetery Ridge, there had been an opening that had been made, and the commander, Hancock, found himself in a terrible situation. There was an Alabama regiment rushing towards a gap in the Union lines. He'd called for reinforcements, but they hadn't arrived yet. Being on the scene, he knew he needed 5 or 6 minutes to get the troops there and form a line, otherwise the Confederates would break through and the Union would lose the Battle of Gettysburg on the second day. As he was worrying about this, the very first of the reinforcements came, the 1st Minnesota Regiment. Hancock immediately called the colonel over and said to him, "Colonel, do you see that flag down there," pointing to the Alabama Regiment's banner? The colonel said he did. "Then capture it." And even though it was a terrible thing to try and do, the 247 Minnesotans of that regiment rushed down that hill and an attack on a force much larger than their own. Well, only 47 of those men came back alive, but they managed to not only give 5 minutes to that Union commander Hancock, but an extra 5 minutes for good measure, and that 10 minutes was enough to get the reinforcements there to stop the rebel advance. Tactically, the charge of the 1st Minnesota was a disaster. The casualty rate was over 80%. They lost all their officers above the rank of captain, and as I said, only 47 of them came back. But strategically, it was hugely successful. Because that regiment charged when it did, the Alabamans did not pierce the Union line. And if the Alabamans pierced the Union line, then it would not have mattered about any of the heroics that Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain did to the farther left of the Union line. The battle would have been over, and the rebels would have won Gettysburg on the second day. We're seeing some tactical and strategic thinking in the current campaign, both on the federal level and here in Massachusetts. Let me explain what I'm talking about. During the last debate, Mitt Romney had a much better debate than Barack Obama. I think it's been very well established. But there was one moment that the Obama administration grabbed onto: Mitt Romney's statement about PBS. Governor Romney stated that although he liked Jim Lehrer and liked Big Bird, he would cut the funding for PBS, saying that he wasn't going to fund it by borrowing money from China. Now that's a very reasonable statement, especially since it's a small amount, and if you can't cut small amounts, how are you going to cut the big ones? But the Obama administration noticed an opening, and for a day or two they talked about Big Bird, and Governor Romney wanting to cut Big Bird. Now, as a one-day tactical thing to try and distract from the big advantage of Governor Romney, that wasn't a bad idea. You needed a different subject to talk about, since everyone else was talking about the debate performance of the president and the commanding performance of Mitt Romney. So as a tactical measure, talking about Big Bird for maybe a day, maybe a day and a half at most, was not a bad move, because you needed to change the subject. Well, however, the Obama re-election campaign decided to go much stronger. You had the president talking about Big Bird all over the place. He was talking about Elmo in a white van invoking the O.J. Simpson chase, which is a little bit ridiculous. But the crowning idiocy was the Big Bird ad. Barack Obama's team running an ad about Ken Lay and all of the terrible bankers, and implying that Mitt Romney was really going to protect the American people, not from Wall Street, but from Sesame Street. Now, this was a little bit amusing when you watched it, But it's kind of stupid. On a strategic level, it was horrible for several reasons. First of all, it kept the topic on the debate. And every time you bring up the debate, it was bad news for Barack Obama, because it reminded people that he lost, and lost pretty good. Secondly, it's a trivial matter. When the President of the United States is discussing Big Bird, while Governor Romney is discussing the economy in Libya, this is a bad thing when you have a situation with 7.8% unemployment, with businesses very worried about jobs, and people not sure where their next paycheck is going to come from. When that's on people's minds, giving money to Big Bird is just not going to cut it, especially since any person who has ever gone shopping for toys for a little kid knows that the Children's Television Workshop and Sesame Street makes a ton of money in royalties on every single type of toy there is. We all remember Tickle Me Elmo and the amount of money people were spending on it. Government money isn't all that vital to PBS. But it's not so much the money again, it was the use of the strategic move and the tactical move. Strategically, this move was horrible for the White House, but the White House thought it was a good tactic, so they kept going after it, until it became not only a strategic failure, but a tactical failure as well. In fact, it became such a failure that the mainstream media was excoriating them over it and telling them, don't do this anymore, mostly because they don't want to see the Obama administration fail. So, that's the difference. Now, tonight I covered a local debate, and I saw the same issue, in the same dynamic in play. John Golnick is running in the 3rd Massachusetts district against Nikki Tsongas, the incumbent. It's a newly formed district since Massachusetts lost the seat, and Tsongas, although an incumbent, has several new communities, including my own in the district. Golnick is running for the 2nd time as well. Both are very competent candidates, and both are provide a very big contrast to each other. Tsongas is one of the few Democrats who is solidly behind her vote on Obamacare. Golnick, of course, opposes it very strongly. So there's a very good contrast between the pair. In their 2nd debate, which took place on Devens, which is the former Fort Devens, Fort Devens is still there, but it's smaller. I don't know if it's now a town of Devens or a village of Devens, whatever they call it. At Devens, where they had their debate, various subjects came up. Now, on a tactical level, John Golnick did very well. He made some very strong points, had some very good rejoinders to Nikki Tsongas, and generally played up the contrast, which he needs to do in order to win, in a district where, according to the last polling, he was down by 7 points. However, strategically, there was a problem. Nikki Tsongas, his opponent, is a Democrat, and a very strong Democrat. However, in this district, Scott Brown won by 15 points last time, and is very far ahead. So Nikki Tsongas, during the debate, took the opportunity to invoke Scott Brown in criticizing John Golnick, even though Golnick had been endorsed by Scott Brown. Nikki Tsongas invoked Brown twice during the debate, and we actually had the spectacle of John Golnick distancing himself from a position of Scott Brown during one section of the debate, while never bringing up the very popular U.S. Senator. Again, on a tactical level, John Golnick did very well. He had a strong command of the issues and excellent answers to questions. But on a strategic level, this was a very bad thing. In the first place, their debate was taking place the same night as Scott Brown's latest debate against Elizabeth Warren, so it wasn't going to get a lot of press to begin with. But more importantly, in terms of a debate for an underdog in a Massachusetts district, the trick is to get beyond the audience. There was a decent audience there, maybe 150 people, but most of the 150 people in that place were partisans for one side or the other. In other words, their votes weren't going anywhere. If you win points with the people already in the crowd, it doesn't aid you in election. What you need to do is win points with people outside of the crowd. And since not a lot of people were watching the streaming, or will sit down to watch the entire debate, or will sit and watch the Q&As that I recorded, which you can see, by the way, at the Tech Guy Blog YouTube channel, all the Q&As separately, you have to say something or do something that will get the attention of the newspapers there, such as the Fitchburg Sentinel and the Lowell Sun. Nikki Tsongas, by invoking Scott Brown, a very atypical move for a Democrat, is bound to get attention for those statements. And John Golnick, in not invoking Scott Brown, even though Brown endorsed him, made a huge mistake. And that will also be brought up. John Golnick won the debate in terms of tactics, but in terms of strategy, this is very bad. You could not cede the popular Scott Brown to your opponent, Nikki Tsongas. That is going to hurt him. And because he's already an underdog, and because there's not a whole lot of time left before Election Day, you don't have too many chances to make this thing right. So, there's your difference. Tactics versus strategy. Now, Mitt Romney has a couple more debates coming up, and tomorrow night, by the time you see this, Paul Ryan will have already debated Joe Biden. Now, on a tactical level, of course, the Obama administration and Joe Biden needs to stop the bleeding. Right now, there's an awful lot of pessimism going on the Democratic side. So on a tactical level, you have to nip that in the bud. But on a strategic level, the most important thing Joe Biden and the president need to do is show themselves as competent. The debate, the entire, how do I put it? The entire conversation about the debate was about President Obama not being ready, not seeming able to debate. The first thing that has to be done in terms of strategic level is to get rid of that meme. The idea is to make people say, all right, Obama just had a bad day, and then he can hopefully recover by the third debate. Winning the second debate would be nice, but establishing that, yes, I belong on that stage is more important. So there's both a tactical goal and a strategic goal. For Mitt Romney and the Republicans, it's a little bit different. On the tactical level, he has to pretty much do what he did. He has to show that he is a competent replacement for Barack Obama. This could be enough because more than 50% of the people in every single poll I've seen think the country's going in the wrong direction. So as long as you can be portrayed as a competent replacement for the president, you're doing all right. On a strategic level, though, he has to keep pressing his advantage. He has to press the president to the point where the president is playing defense in an awful lot of states. So again, tactical moves and strategic moves. If you're running any kind of campaign, political campaign or military campaign, if you don't look at both of these things, tactical moves and strategic moves, you're in trouble. Remember, in terms of strategy, it's always about what the final goal is. In an election, the final goal is to win. It's very nice if people say good things about you. It's very nice if someone says, you ran a spirited campaign. But a spirited campaign doesn't mean anything if you're retired and going home. Likewise, on the military side, we have troops in Afghanistan. We need to remember that even if we have some tactical failures, we have to have a strategic plan. If we don't have a proper strategic plan, and if our moves are not advancing that strategic plan, then we're wasting the lives of our troops. But if we have a strategic plan, then even though it puts some of our people at risk, it's worth doing. After all, the goal that we have, assuming we have proper goals, is why we went in the first place. So remember, tactical matters are important, but without strategic planning, you go nowhere. Again, thanks for watching the latest in our subscription commentaries. And I want to remind you, of course, that this week we're going to have the Tech Guy on the radio, 10 a.m. to noon on WCRN. We're going to have several of the candidates running for Congress in Massachusetts as guests during our first hour. And our second hour, we're going to talk to one of the pollsters who does the Granite State poll, WMUR poll. Should be a very interesting show. And don't forget, October 20th, our 100th week on the air. Make sure you reserve your tickets for our event at Lago's Restaurant on Mill Street in Worcester. It'll be a delicious meal and a good time, and I look forward to meeting you all. Thanks again for listening and putting up with me tonight, and you have a great